Hello everyone and welcome back to another high-level match of StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is the grand finals of the ESL Open Cup 139 Americas. Game number 1 in this best of 5 series is played on the map Cosmic Sapphire and spawning right here in the top left-hand corner with the blue Protoss pieces from South Korea. We are looking at NightMare's main Nexus and his opponent in the opposite corner with the red Protoss probes. He's from Canada and he goes by the name of Trigger. Now, as a StarCraft 2 commentator, I'll be the first to admit that I tend to cast the same players over and over and over again. And the simple reason for that is that I try to bring you the very best games of StarCraft 2. And believe it or not, it turns out that the best players in the game usually also they tend to play the best games. I know, this is kind of mind-boggling and definitely not something you would have ever expected. Anyways, because of that, I tend to cast the same guys, like the same top 25 or so, very frequently, and it's almost as if there's no one else existing outside of the top 25, which is definitely not fair, right? There's a lot of great players out there that definitely deserve a spotlight as well, and like I said, this particular series is the grand finals of an online tournament that a lot of good players sign up for. Now, admittedly, this particular match was played right after, this particular tournament was played right after TSL 9 ended. So some of the very best players in the world, they were probably traveling back home. So, it's a great opportunity for some other players to also get a spotlight. Either way, a real quick rundown of both of these players in case you're unfamiliar. I do believe I've casted games of NightMare on YouTube in the past, so maybe you are familiar with him, but he's from South Korea. He's always been very good. So he's right now the rank 46 in the world according to LowkoTV. So maybe not someone who can win premier tournaments, but he's definitely capable of winning, and taking games off of some of the very best players in the world. He completed his mandatory military service some time ago, and yeah, he decided to come back to StarCraft 2, and he's still looking solid, right? Looking solid, and it's been a little while since I've had an update on his game, so we'll figure out together where he's currently at. Are we gonna go for a cheeky little opener here? Oh. We'll have to see if he decides to add on something as well, but judging by the fact that the probe is sticking around, I think that he is gonna go for a little bit of a proxy. Generally speaking, on Cosmic Sapphire, this is where you go for the proxy Stargate. Wouldn't be surprised to know what we're gonna see here in just a moment. Either way, Trigger, definitely someone you want to be familiar with, or at least you want to keep his name in mind. It is, by the way, going to be a Stargate. So, Trigger, 20-year-old Canadian. Apparently, according to his Wikipedia page, he hit Grandmaster League for the first time 2 years ago. Now, the climb from Grandmaster League to pro level is super steep, okay? I say this as someone who's reached Grandmaster League many times before in the past. I am not even remotely close to the pro level, okay? Everyone has got their limit, and I feel like my limit is, maybe bottom 100 Grandmaster, which is still, decent, but it's very hard for me to climb above that. And most people will hit their limit at some point, and it doesn't seem to me that Trigger has really reached his just yet. So, LowkoTV uses its own rating system as well. And apparently, January of 2021, so about a year and a half ago, a little bit more, he had a rating of 1250. So that was him already well into Grandmaster League. However, right now, he's got a rating of 2400, which is one of the steepest climbs I've seen on LowkoTV, on that particular rating website. So Trigger now considered to be the rank 41 in the world. The rank, 2 from Canada. Obviously, the rank 1 from Canada being Scarlet. Oh, he's actually going to save it up. Ooh, a little bit cheeky. Okay. Would have been a problem if he decided to fly in the Oracle right from the get-go. Anyhow, we've got some proxy action as well. Man, this is a series that is starting off with a bang. Just keep these guys in mind, especially Trigger, because I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to continuously improve as well moving forward. How many Oracles are we going to save? We should only save 2, right? So with 2, you can start outpowering that shield battery's healing, which is really nice, but at the same time, Trigger is going for a proxy gateway, and he is looking to assault the main base. He's not just looking for the natural. He's looking to assault the main base of NightMare here in just a moment. It's going to be 4 gateways here together with Blink. There go the Oracles, though. How many workers will we actually kill? Is there going to be a recall? Well, there won't be, because he just used another chrono boost on that Blink. Blink at this point, however, is done. Probes are falling left, right, and center. But is he going to just Blink straight on top of this? I think he should. Shouldn't he? Well, yeah, now he does. All the Stalkers on the other side of the map get surrounded. There is obviously Blink available, so I don't think those Stalkers will really care too much about that one force field Probes are pulled away from the mineral line. In the meantime, though, 19 workers were killed here by those 2 oracles. A couple probes are still available, but this economy right now is an absolute shatters. Immortal, though, gets targeted as well by Trigger. And last time I checked, 2 oracles are not going to win against this amount of stalkers. So assuming everything is microed correctly, I do believe that this is going to be an advantage right here for the Canadian. It's a little bit of a weird advantage after losing all of the economy. If you can get another Immortal out, it might be doable, but that's not going to happen, is it? There's the oracles showing up at home as well. There's no energy on them, though. So, yeah, that one already is, well, dead. If it wasn't dead, though, it would have run out of energy. But there we go. Game number 1 goes in favor of Trigger. Whew. Okay. Game 2. Tropical Sacrifice. Normally a bit more of a macro-focused map, although, to be fair, it's not like Cosmic Sapphire is usually particularly cheesy. Anyhow, this is a Protoss versus Protoss after all. Usually a rather feisty matchup. Let's leave it at that. Anyhow, let's see if this game will go a little bit longer than the previous one. What I was trying to get at, though, with all the commentary at the beginning of that previous game, is the fact that while NightMare has been, you know, at around this skill level for several years, Trigger has arrived at this skill level right now, but I don't think this is his stop yet. I'm pretty sure yeah, if you look back at this video in like a half year or so from now, I think he's probably going to continuously climb. I mean, I'm sure that NightMare is trying to do the same thing as well. Nobody wants to be, you know, the 50th ranked player in the world. You want to be the first ranked player. You want to be the very best. Like, no one ever... Anyways, that's the goal, right? I don't think that NightMare is going to be able to climb very easily moving forward. Just, well, judging off of the fact that he's been around this skill level for many years. But Trigger has just gotten here, and he's not getting off of the bus just yet, okay? This is not his stop. Let's see what we're going to do, though. Both players going for a pylon on the low ground. This is where we play expansion chicken in Protoss versus Protoss, where both players want to pretend they go for an expand at the very least, and sometimes you do go for an expand. But the problem is there's going to be that probe instead of your main base. It can, well, make it hard for you to go for the natural right over here, because it can plant down a pylon. It can do the same thing on the other side of the map as well, and then you need to get a zealot out and eventually a stalker. So even though these guys may very well be looking at getting a base here eventually, they're not going to be able to get it up and running here until at least a little bit from now. Trigger making a zealot. In the meantime, that's also happening on the other side of the map. He's now patrolling that natural expansion here of NightMare, making 100% sure that he knows if the opponent decides to take it. So you kind of want your opponent to take a Nexus, but you also only want it to take it when you have, you know, when you've given them permission for it. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you still have at least a little bit of control. Well, speaking of which, this is what I'm talking about. You know what costs about 400 minerals as well? Oh, good scout. You can buy 3 gateways. Right about 3 gateways for the same cost of a Nexus, okay? Trigger still had that probe on the low ground, so at the very least, NightMare saw that. NightMare at this point is probably putting his opponent on a Stargate opener or something along those lines as well, or maybe a Twilight once again, but anyways, it's going to be 4 gateways, just like what we saw in the previous game. There is a shield battery coming up, and NightMare does have a Stargate of his own. Worked out quite well for him, in the previous game, but okay, this is a good scout. Don't mind me, just putting down a pylon. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. Okay, it's gonna be slow warp-ins, but yeah, I think the Void Ray is not a bad idea. Obviously, battery overcharge is amazing in these sorts of circumstances. The only problem is that you can only go for a battery overcharge when you have a Nexus. So sometimes going for a Nexus is actually rather safe. Anyhow, NightMare at this point scouts out what's happening on the other side of the map. He will realize exactly what he's facing off against here in just a moment. And, well, he's already deduced it, right? He's already figured out exactly what he's going up against when he started up that Void Ray. I think he needs to go for another Void, though. Maybe a Chrono Boost on the Cybercore? Ugh, that was an ugly little Chrono Boost there. For like half of that Chrono Boost duration, there was nothing building inside of the Stargate. Okay, maybe that's a little bit extreme, but... Anyways, a 4-gate all-in. A classic. It's gonna be Mass Stalker right here from Trigger. He's trying to bait units down that ramp. Oh my god, he's just... he just walked straight up there. Alright, I think he probably assumed that the Zealot would have granted him high ground vision, but just barely did not have enough. Warp gates are done here for NightMare. I wouldn't mind seeing him doubling up on the pylons here, but obviously, I mean, he needs to warp something in. Okay, he goes for a few sentries. Goes for the Nexus right now, too. So in his mind, he's already got this defended. I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. At this point, Trigger is still adding on a ton of units. Doesn't look to me like he wants to expand behind this. And, well, NightMare is going to plant down a pylon over there as well. Rather than reinforcing the wall, he's going to plant down a pylon over here, too, to figure out whether or not there ever will be an expansion. Either way, this is the classic opener, right? I mean, when players were playing this build order back in 2010, the 4-gate, Trigger was literally like 8 years old, assuming his Wikipedia page was correct, so maybe he doesn't recall those days, but there's a reason why we stopped playing those builds. I mean, well, first and foremost, Warp Gates got nerfed. Never mind, guys. I still think he's breaking through this. Warp Gates used to be a quicker research, so back in the day, you could actually hit your opponent in the face with way more units way faster. Okay, actually a couple of depths got warped in on the other side of the map too. Cheeky little move here, NightMare, and I don't mind it, but the thing is, now we have the same problem like we did in the previous game. Maybe we're dealing damage on the other side of the map, but you also gotta live at home. Battery overcharge though, this is what I was talking about. Super helpful, unless you lose the battery. Those two adepts are getting a lot of work done though. Neither player really producing a whole lot. But in the end, I do still think that there's enough Stalkers here, right? The Stalker count is still not messing around. If somehow, some way, NightMare can continuously mine for a little bit longer, he is gonna end up with more stuff. The problem is, this is where his production is at. Okay. And just like that, we find ourselves on Data C. Match point right here for Trigger. You know, I was thinking this, right? While the game was loading, what's kind of nice about Protoss versus Protoss is that strategically speaking, High Grandmaster League is really not that different from High Bronze. Like, players are, even at this level, still trying to obtain the victory by like the 4-minute mark all of the time. There's very little punches to the body, okay? People only punch straight to the throat in this matchup, and that's kind of nice. I mean, it's not as much fun to play, I'll tell you that. I mean, I personally don't like it as much, but to watch, I'm here for it. I like it. Anyhow, match point right here for Trigger already. This might be one of the fastest best of 5s and grand finals I've casted recently, although if it's up to NightMare, he's got a say in the matter too, believe it or not. He is, gonna try and prevent that from being the case. Or maybe speed it up. Kind of depends. Are we gonna go gateway? Oh, yeah, we're gonna go gateway. Okay. So Trigger has got 1 gateway, whereas NightMare has 2 gateways. Now, believe it or not, this will be on the test, so make sure to take notes. 2 gateways is more than 1 gateway. Because out of 2 gateways, you can make 2 units at once, whereas out of 1 gateway, you can only make 1 unit at once. What are you doing, Trigger? Trigger just... Well, I'm triggered right now. He went for a Nexus? In Protoss versus Protoss? Is this guy... Why do we not saturate the gas? We forgot. Okay. I think we're just a little bit late. Anyways, yeah, he's going for a Nexus. Now, like we talked about in the previous one, or, you know, it wasn't really a conversation. Like I explained in my monologue in the previous game. You can go for a battery overcharge, right, when the Nexus is done. So sometimes the Nexus is very nice to have as a defensive measure. So at this point, Trigger must have realized that there is no pylon inside of the main base. No second pylon, that is. There's 1 pylon on the low ground, but that doesn't really tell you all too much. Players proxy that pylon all the time. NightMare right now completing the wall off right here for Trigger, and this should give him the indicator as to what he needs to know. Yeah, so this is not him finishing the wall, by the way. This is him creating a door for his own units. So what he's probably going to do is cancel that and then get the unit through. Yep. That's the plan, and I like it. So NightMare is going to go for a pylon over here. There are 2 shield batteries coming up here, and those are for Trigger. Okay, NightMare still has his probe around as well. Stalker at this point available, just trying to buy as much time right here with the Adept, while indeed Mr. NightMare is making his own shield batteries inside of the natural expansion here of his opponent. Okay, 1 of them ended up going down here. This is now NightMare going after the 2nd shield battery of Trigger. Problem is, already the shields are gone, so do you really want to battery overcharge that one? Not necessarily. This one is, yeah, gonna take a lot of damage. NightMare ended up being forced to cancel one of his own. That probe is still alive. That probe really needs to be targeted. Anyways, oh, I think the Oracle, or sorry, not the Oracle, the Adept actually got picked off there. Did one of the Adepts just die? Yeah, it did. Okay, I was gonna say. Where'd it go? Something's off. So these are all nightmares. That one is nightmare too. And this is all a nightmare for Trigger. Ha! Fun, Lowko. Great job. Yeah, so I think what we've learned is that 2 is indeed a bigger number than 1. And while 1 is not necessarily the worst number, it can be really good. It's not going to be good enough in this game. Okay, inside and out. Who's going to be cheesing who? I'm excited to find out. Maybe we're not going to be cheesing anyone. I'd be surprised, to be honest. Judging by the way that this series has been going so far. I've got a feeling that both of these guys, once again, want to get aggressive. Now, at this point, you've kind of shown, though, what you want to do in the early game, right? That's the tricky part about playing a best of 5 or even a best of 7. Your opponent will not only, well, be familiar with your strategies, they've just played against it, so they will know, yeah, roughly what it is that you like to go for. Anyhow. Gateways ever so slightly differently timed. I've noticed that before in this series so far, where both guys are going for the same strat. Somehow, some way, one of the gateways is later than the other. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it was late on the pylon or something along those lines, but it's only a few seconds, but at this point it should be 100% identical. Anyhow, not a huge deal. Are we gonna go for an expansion? Really, Trigger? Are you so sure about that, dude? So, okay. He's looking around the main base of his opponent, and he now sees the second pylon. So, that second pylon is an indicator that there is no shenanigans happening at this point on the other side of the map. Now, obviously, in game number 1 of this series, we had a proxy Stargate after the second pylon was planted, you know, inside of the main base as well, if I recall correctly. Anyways, generally speaking, though, Trigger, for example, in that previous game, in the previous map, he had a probe inside of his opponent's main base, and he saw the lack of a second pylon. But honestly, at this point in StarCraft 2, that doesn't really tell you all too much, because it's become very common in PvP to just plant that second pylon anywhere you like. Doesn't matter if you want to go for a cheese, doesn't matter if you want to go for a proxy, you can just build your second pylon over here and tell your opponent the story that you are, you know, a crazy man and that you are looking to, well, get aggressive here in just a moment. Because oftentimes that will work out in your advantage. So even though, yeah, it's very easy. So he's actually going to get a follow-up scout right there. Mineral walking that probe through that zealot. Anyways, yeah, it's a fun little mechanic. At this point, though, I think he knows exactly what he's going up against. A gas was stolen on the other side of the map. Trigger actually only mining 2 out of 3. I gotta imagine that that's a mistake. Anyhow, he did go for a quick nexus on the low ground, so he's gonna go for a second gas over here instead. He's obviously already shown some massive gateway shenanigans earlier on. He's not afraid to just make 4 gateways and go for an all-in, but doesn't look like that's happening here so far. When you have a second nexus done like that, doesn't really... Excuse me, it doesn't really make as much sense. Okay. So, guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I believe we've got ourselves a bit of a macro game. Like, I am sitting at the edge of my seat as well. It's not good for my posture, but I believe we've just got ourselves a standard, quote-unquote, standard macro game. Trigger did go for a bit of a different opener, I suppose, but yeah, that gas steal didn't really hurt him all too much. Robo facility going on here for the Canadian Protoss, and, well, we have one already for our Korean Protoss, who now also followed it up with a Twilight Council. Okay, Observer. He's going to scout out exactly, well, what NightMare needs to know. And what he really needs to know is the tech route here of his opponent. So despite the fact that he stole the gas, he doesn't actually know what's happening here. He knows that it won't be a very quick Oracle, and he knows that it won't be anything too crazy. So he's checking the gas count right now, checking the pylon count. Fair enough. He's going to see the Robo facility here in just a moment. Chrono boost on a Immortal. Okay. So at this point, Trigger just making sure that he's protected against most things. He did see the Robo facility on the other side of the map, so doesn't really have to be too concerned. Blink is coming up here for NightMare. I like the fact that he made 2 sentries. Sentries are super helpful. But it can be quite tricky to defend, even when you do have sentries. Just because, well, if you're the defensive player, right? Usually you sit behind the wall. What are you going to force field? I mean, you can kind of force field over here, but that feels far away. And I don't think that those sentries can properly reach that far. Prism coming up. Trigger definitely is an aggressive boy, isn't he? Not afraid to just bring all of the units towards the other side. Yeah, we're going 6 gateways together with a Robo facility. No blink or anything along those lines, but I mean, he does have a Prism. That essentially grants blink to any Protoss unit, assuming you micro it well. Okay, this is scouted. He sees it right now. So where do you go? Yeah, okay, so he does decide to back off. I don't know if that's the best decision. I wonder if fighting out here is actually better. It's a little bit tricky to call. He does have blink done at this point. This is not something that Trigger knows of. Okay, good force field. He sees the army of the opponent. Third Immortal, though, just about to join as well. About 20 seconds or so from now. There's a Forge coming up. Forge for a Trigger, that is. Okay, just blinking whatever he can. Using the Prism. Maybe I shouldn't call it blinking. That might make it a little... Oh my god, he already went for the battery overcharge? It's a little bit preemptive. Yeah, so you gotta be careful, because if you move too far... Okay, now he blinks forward, actually. Hold that thought, because he does snipe the Prism. He's now going after the Immortal. That being said, half of the Protoss army in blue is stuck outside of the base. So that's what I was trying to bring up. When you don't have a Prism of your own and you can't, like, you know, ferry the units from one side of the wall to the other, it can be actually quite tricky to get a good engagement in. So even though he sprung the trap by showing off his blink and sniping a bunch of those units, that's nice and all. But in the meantime, half of his army wasn't actually fighting. Well, I mean, maybe not half of it as far as absolute numbers of units go, but as far as DPS, Immortals pack a punch, especially against Stalkers. Anyhow, I can't believe I'm saying this, guys, but we have a third Nexus coming up. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, the same thing is building. Wild. Absolutely crazy. I don't think we're gonna see any cheese, guys. Interesting. I mean, that was a little aggressive, I suppose, from Trigger, but that is, you know, not too uncommon in PvP. A lot of Stalkers going very deep. Okay, he wants to go... Oh, okay, that was actually unscouted, that's why. He wants to go straight into the main base. 2 Stalkers somehow, some way didn't make it. I don't know how that didn't happen. Recall, though, is being used here by Mr. Trigger, so once again, he is going to be able to get those units out of the main. Stalkers here in the meantime, trying to be annoying. Charge is finishing up in just a second. And while the Canadian Protoss here doesn't have as many probes, he does have one hell of an army. We're talking 71 supply versus only 44. There's a lot more probes available for NightMare, so that's nice and all, assuming the game goes long enough. But at this point... Oh, Immortal's in the front as well. At this point, he's got to be very careful. Okay, snipes a couple of the Zealots. Not bad. Battery overcharge, obviously super nice, but still no Prism available. Yeah, one's being chronoed out at this point. That's nice, I guess. Okay. Oh, that's such an awkward fight. I like this so much better here for the player in red. Still, we're talking 4 Immortals. 4 Immortals is really nice. If you can jump on top of that army, that'd be sweet. Or if you can somehow slice it off once again. There's the Prism for NightMare too, so with good juggling, he can definitely keep a lot of those units alive for quite some time. But I feel like in this particular situation, most of the time, the players, or the red players' units are actually firing, whereas the players in blue are mostly just trying to disengage. Okay, does pick up that Immortal just barely by the skin of its teeth. I don't know if they have teeth, but they're proverbial teeth at the very least. Immortal's running dangerously low. Trigger has got to be on the lookout as well to potentially snap that Prism if it's that adventurous. He's bringing in more and more Immortals, though, from the other side of the map. Both players microing multiple battles at once. And I think in the end, the army count here that Trigger has had is just giving him a little bit too much firepower. Yep. He ends up with way more stuff. Third Nexus here is in a world of trouble. All of the probes just got destroyed. Charge is still available, obviously, as well on those Zealots, so he's going to be able to move forward. Can he snap the Prism? Probably could have if he really tried, but anyhow, I don't think at this point it really matters. So that does mean that our Canadian hero here is going to be the winner of the ESL Open Cup 139 Americas. Well played. GG's.